Hello, and welcome to Southern Gal True Crime, where we cover missing persons, cold cases, unsolved cases, and more. And today we're going to be taking a look at Ronald Gene Simmons. And this is an Arkansas case. Well, it started in New Mexico in 1981, but the actual crimes were committed in Arkansas in 1987. So I was in my teens when this occurred during this case. So I kind of remember hearing about it just on the local news and in the newspapers. But when I got older and started getting interested in true crime, I started taking a closer look at this case and found out just how brutal and horrific this case was. And in my opinion, Mr. Simmons was just a monster, plain and simple, and that's the best way you can put it. Before I go any further, just want to give a trigger warning. Unfortunately, this case does involve the harming of minors, so if you find that disturbing, which I think any sane, rational person would, just be aware of that before you watch any more of this video. So I'm just going to start off with just a brief overview of Mr. Simmons and his early life and some of the events leading up to the crimes that he committed in 1987. And most all the information I'm going to use is from Wikipedia, so you can just go over there, search Ronald Gene Simmons, and it will give you any kind of information that you may want to know that is not included in this video. So, Ronald Gene Simmons Sr. was an American mass murderer and spree killer who killed 16 people over a week-long period in Arkansas in 1987. He was a retired military serviceman. He murdered 14 members of his own family, including a daughter he had SA'd, and the child he had fathered with her, as well as a former co-worker, a stranger, and I think he wounded 4 other people. And he is widely considered the most prolific mass murderer in Arkansas history. In Mr. Simmons' early years, he was in the United States Navy from 1965 through 1979, and in the U.S. Air Force he was in the United States Navy from 1957 to 1963, and the United States Air Force from 1965 through 1979. He achieved Master Sergeant in the U.S. Air Force, and he was awarded the Bronze Star Medal, Republic of Vietnam Gallantry Cross, and the Air Force Ribbon for excellent marksmanship. In 1960, I believe, he married his wife, Becky Ulabari, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, in 1960, and of course she died in 1987. Simmons was born on July 15th, 1940 in Chicago, Illinois. He and his wife had 7 children. Let's see, look at my notes. Okay. Simmons died on June 25th, 1990 at age 49 at the Cummins Unit in Lincoln County, Arkansas by lethal injection. He was convicted of 16 counts of capital murder, and like I said, including 14 members of his own family, which is truly horrific. His crimes occurred from December 22nd through December 28th in 1987 in the towns of Dover and Russellville, Arkansas. And his weapons of choice were hammer, crowbar, rope, and firearms. So that's just a brief overview of the case, and we will get into the details now. We'll start with some events leading up to the crimes that he ultimately committed in Arkansas. On April 3rd, 1981, Simmons was being investigated by the Cloudcroft, New Mexico Department of Human Services for allegations that he had fathered a child with his 17-year-old daughter, Sheila. Fearing arrest, Simmons fled New Mexico in late 1981 with his family, first to Ward, Arkansas, which is actually not very far from where I live, in Lonoke County, and then to Pope County near Dover, Arkansas in the summer of 1983. The family took up residence on a 13-acre tract of land about 6.5 miles north of Dover that they would dub Mockingbird Hill. The residence was constructed of 2 older model mobile homes joined to form one large home, neither of which had telephone or indoor plumbing, and was surrounded by a makeshift privacy fence, which was as high as 10 feet tall in some places. As a result of the home's lack of plumbing, Simmons ordered his family to dig 3 cesspits, one of which would eventually be where he disposed of some of their bodies. Simmons worked a string of low-paying jobs in the nearby town of Russellville, Arkansas. He quit a position as an accounts receivable clerk at Woodline Motor Freight after numerous reports of inappropriate advances. And then he went to work at a Sinclair Mini Mart for about 1.5 years before quitting on December 18th, 1987. By the time of the killings, the number of people within the home had been reduced to 7, as 2 of the older children had moved out, married, and had children of their own. So that is leading up to the events that occurred in Arkansas. Shortly before Christmas 1987, Simmons decided to harm all the members of his family. On the morning of December 22nd, he first harmed his wife Rebecca and eldest son Gene by, trigger warning, bludgeoning them with a hammer and using a firearm. He then killed his 3-year-old granddaughter Barbara by strangulation. Simmons dumped the bodies in one of the cesspits he had forced his children to dig previously. Simmons then waited for his other children to return from school for Christmas break, and upon their arrival, he told them that he had presents for them, but he wanted to give them to them one at a time. He first harmed his daughter, 17-year-old Loretta, whom Simmons strangled and held under the water in a rain barrel. This is just horrific. The 3 other children, Eddie, Marianne, and Becky, were then harmed in the same way and subsequently dumped in the cesspit. Around midday on October 26th, the remaining members of the family arrived at the home. Simmons had invited them over for the holidays. The first to be harmed was Simmons' son Billy and his wife Renata, who were both, he used a firearm. He then strangled and drowned their 20-month-old son, Trey. Okay. Simmons also used a firearm on his oldest daughter, Sheila, whom he had SA'd, and her husband, Dennis McNulty. He then went on to strangle his child by Sheila, 7-year-old Sylvia Gale, and finally his 21-month-old grandson, Michael. Okay, so we made it through that. Take a breath. All right. Let me find my place I was at here. Simmons laid the bodies of his whole family in neat rows in the lounge. Their bodies were covered with coats except that of Sheila, who was covered by Rebecca Simmons' best tablecloth. Don't know if that has any meaning. You never know with these kinds of crimes. The bodies of Trey and Michael were wrapped in plastic sheeting and left in abandoned cars at the end of the lane. After the murders, Simmons drove to a Sears store in Russellville, Arkansas, where he retrieved Christmas gifts that he had previously ordered for his family. And that night, he went for a drink at a local bar before returning to the home, where he spent the rest of the evening and the following day drinking and watching TV. So this just gives you an insight into his mindset, how he could commit these crimes, murder, harm 14 members of his own family, and then just sit and drink beer and watch TV all day and all night. Right, we shall continue. On the morning of December 28th, Simmons drove to a Walmart in Russellville, Arkansas, where he purchased another firearm to use in the attacks that he was about to carry out. His first target was a law firm where he had previously worked and met Secretary Kathy Cribbins Kendrick. Simmons had been infatuated with Miss Kendrick, but she had rejected him. After walking into the office, he shot and killed Kendrick. He next went to an oil company office where he intended to harm the owner, Russell Rusty Taylor. Taylor was also the owner of the Sinclair Mini Mart, from which Simmons had recently resigned. He used the firearm on Mr. Taylor before harming another person in the building named James David Chafin. Chafin was the only deceased victim who was a complete stranger to Simmons. Another employee in the building was shot at, but thankfully the bullet missed. Simmons then drove onto Sinclair Mini Mart, shooting and wounding 2 more people. His final target was the office of the Woodline Motor Freight Company, where he used a firearm on his former supervisor twice, wounding her. He then ordered one of the employees at gunpoint to call the police. When they arrived, Simmons handed over his firearm and surrendered without any resistance. And over the course of the 40-minute-long rampage, Simmons harmed 2 and injured 4 others. So those are the crimes he committed, which, as I said before, very horrific, very brutal, no conscience or empathy whatsoever, in my opinion. So now we will move on to the trial and conviction. After his arrest, Simmons underwent a psychiatric evaluation where he was found fit to stand trial. He first went on trial for the murders of Kendrick and Chafin and was found guilty on March 12th, 1988, being sentenced to death. He made an additional statement under oath supporting his sentence, and I quote, "I, Ronald Gene Simmons Sr., want it to be known that it is my wish and my desire that absolutely no action by anybody be taken to appeal or in any way change this sentence. It is further respectfully requested that this sentence be carried out expeditiously." And to me, that just tells me, in my opinion, that he was a coward and did not want to live the rest of his life with the knowledge of what he had done. Although I don't think he really cared, because I don't think he was empathetic or had a conscience. Again, that is my opinion. He next went on trial for the murders of his 14 family members and was found guilty on February 10th, 1989, again being sentenced to death by lethal injection. As to motive, a family friend told investigators that Simmons' wife had been saving up money to divorce Simmons when the crimes occurred. Also during the trial, Simmons had to be removed from the courtroom after the prosecutor, John Bynum, was punched by Simmons, and Simmons tried to grab a deputy's handgun when Bynum introduced a letter between Simmons and his daughter Sheila, where Simmons expressed anger that Sheila had revealed that he was the father of her child and that he would see her in hell. He refused to appeal his death sentence, stating, "To those who oppose the death penalty, in my particular case, anything short of death would be cruel and unusual punishment." The trial court conducted a hearing concerning Simmons' competence to waive further proceedings and concluded that his decision was knowing and intelligent. So, while on death row, Simmons had to be separated from other prisoners as his life was threatened constantly. This was because he refused to appeal his death sentence. The other prisoners believed Simmons was damaging their chances of beating their own death sentences. On May 31st, Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton signed Simmons' execution warrant, and on June 25th, 1990, he died by the method he had chosen, lethal injection in the Cummins unit. None of his surviving relatives will claim the body, and he was buried in a potter's field in Lincoln County, Arkansas. So that is the case of Ronald Gene Simmons. Now, there was a book written called Zero at the Bone, written by Bryce Marshall and Paul Williams. I read it a long time ago. I need to go back and reread it, but I remember that it was very good and contained more detailed information. So I suggest, if you want to know more information about this case, to go check that book out. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video informative. If you do, please like and share it. What else? You can also head over to the Southern Gal True Crime Facebook page, where I post breaking news and lots of stuff that you won't find here on the YouTube channel. Before I go, I want to end with the most important part of this story, which are the victims. So I just wanted to revisit, give you the names and ages of all of the victims. Becky Simmons, age 46. Loretta Simmons, age 17. Eddie Simmons, age 14. Mary Ann Simmons, age 11. Little Becky Simmons, age 8. Little Gene Simmons, age 26. Barbara Simmons, age 3. Billy Simmons, age 22. Renata Simmons, age 21. Trey Simmons, age 20 months. Sheila McNulty, age 24. Dennis McNulty, age 33. Michael McNulty, age 21 months. And Sylvia McNulty, age 6. Always remember, the victims are the most important part of any case like this, and it's always important to remember them. Once again, thanks for watching the video. If you like the content that we have here on the channel, please subscribe, hit the bell so you'll be notified whenever we upload new content. Like and share our videos, especially our missing persons and unsolved case videos. That's the main purpose that I have here at the channel, is to get the word out to the public about missing persons, unsolved cases, and maybe try to bring some closure or generate some tips and leads regarding those cases. Everybody have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and be safe out there, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.